the south of the Automotive Museum in Balboa Park is the San Diego Air and Space Museum. There are many things to see, and we'll concentrate on the main exhibits. This is part 1 of the Air and Space Museum. We will focus on aircraft within the milestones of flight and the Great War Gallery. From 1891 to 1896, Otto Lilienthal made over 2,000 test flights. This is his glider number 11. He became the first pilot to control his gliders by shifting his body weight. His designs and work would help the Wright brothers unlock the secret of powered flight at the turn of the century. The 1901 Wright glider was a larger version of their first design. They leveraged much of Lilienthal's research notes and even used their prior expertise in bicycle manufacturing. The wires holding this glider together are of the same material for bicycle spokes. Its longest flight was 389 feet over 17 seconds. However, it was difficult to control. That led them to build a wind tunnel and subsequently work on their 1902 glider. The addition of a vertical rudder gave the Wright brothers the control they were seeking, allowing for pitch, yaw, and roll. It claimed every world record in its class. Longest distance at 622 feet, longest duration of 90 seconds, and most flights over 700. The Vinfiz Flyer was the first Wright airplane sold to a private citizen, Calbraith Perry Rogers. In 1911, he secured sponsoring from the Armour Meatpacking Company in exchange for advertising their latest grape drink, Vinfiz. William Randolph Hearst was offering a $50,000 prize for the first aircraft to fly coast to coast in 30 days or less. He took off from Brooklyn, New York. After 4,000 miles, 75 stops, 16 crashes, and several injuries, Rogers overshot the deadline by 19 days. Even still, there was a crowd of 20,000 to greet him in Pasadena, California. It is fantastical, yet appropriate. The Earthrise can be seen by Wilbur and Orville Wright relaxing on a park bench in the Taurus Littrow Valley of the Moon. They even saved a spot for you. On October 14, 1947, the sound barrier was broken by this plane, the Bell X-1. Chuck Yeager reached Mach 1.06, or about 700 miles per hour, creating the world's first sonic boom over the Mojave Desert. Notice the smooth shape. It was called the Bullet with Wings, modeled after the Browning 50 caliber machine gun round, which was known to be stable at supersonic speeds. Yeager said, "Just before you break through the sound barrier, the cockpit shakes the most." His Mach meter fluctuated around Mach 0.98, then pegged off the scale just over Mach 1. Regarding the sound barrier, he later noted the flight was smooth, saying, quote, "Grandma could be sitting up there sipping lemonade." The main entrance of the museum displays the spirit of St. Louis. There's also an animatronic Charles Lindbergh.
Welcome to the San Diego Air and Space Museum.
Charles Lindbergh was the first to fly non-stop across the Atlantic from New York City to Paris in May 1927. Ryan NYP was the original name. Ryan Aeronautical in San Diego built the plane, and NYP stands for New York to Paris. Incidentally, Ryan Aeronautical is now part of Northrop Grumman. Named after sponsors back in Lindbergh's hometown, the spirit of St. Louis became a part of history. The original is in the Smithsonian. This third flying replica was built here in San Diego to replace the second, which was lost in an arson fire in 1978. Here's an exact copy of the cockpit in the original. The wicker chair, a control stick, basic instruments like altimeter, airspeed, a clock, and engine RPM. The flight lasted 33.5 hours. Imagine fighting fatigue and flying alone without radio communication. Lindbergh earned the $25,000 Orteig Prize for the first transatlantic flight in 1927 and achieved instant fame around the world. Less than a decade after the Wright brothers' historic flight, the Curtiss A-1 Triad became the first official U.S. Navy seaplane in 1911. Curtiss set up an encampment in San Diego, which is now part of Naval Air Station North Island. He introduced the A-1 by flying above Coronado and San Diego Bay. World War I began in 1914, finally triggered by the assassination of Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand. This plane is an Albatros D2. The role of aircraft was still being figured out. Their main use was for reconnaissance. The Albatros D2, however, was set up for combat with twin synchronized machine guns. It allowed for firing bullets at the enemy rather than shooting off your own propeller. The cutaway shows the structure of the Albatros D2, part of the primary fighter series of Germany. The German ace Oswald Bohlke flew in an Albatros like this one, and even wrote the first tactical air combat guide called Dixta Bohlke. He offered axioms such as attack from behind, fire only at close range, and keep the sun behind you. The Fokker E-3 Eindecker, or monoplane, was the first German aircraft to be armed with a synchronizer gear for the single-mounted machine gun. It was a predecessor of the Albatros class. Once entered into service, these planes were known to the Allies as the Fokker Scourge for their domination of the skies from mid-1915 to early 1916. Looking at the Fokker E-3 Eindecker, you can see the black cross on the body and the wings, which identify the aircraft as a German fighter plane. Dangerous and agile, the Eindecker was invincible and led to many ace pilots for Germany, including an exceptional pilot of the Red Plane in the background. Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron, was the greatest ace fighter pilot of World War I. He flew several Fokker aircraft and attained 19 of his last 80 victories in the Fokker DR-1 triplane. Most aircraft were painted with muted colors, like gray, green, or brown. The Red Baron chose a bright red to avoid friendly fire from support troops and planes. In service in autumn of 1917, the Fokker DR-1 was armed like many planes, with twin synchronized machine guns. Richthofen's legendary status lasts even to this day, in some ways historical or for marketing. The Peanuts cartoon has the Red Baron as the arch nemesis of Snoopy, and a song was written by the Royal Guardsmen, Snoopy versus the Red Baron. Even now, a frozen pizza company uses his name. The three wings provided so much lift, the Dreidecker could outmaneuver and initially outclimb any other aircraft at the time. One drawback was the immense stress on the top wing during extreme maneuvering, causing it to shear off. The Red Baron was hailed as a legend in his own time and was respected by pilots on both sides. On April 21, 1918, he was shot down over Morlancourt Ridge in France. Although they were his enemies, Allied forces recovered his body and buried him with full military honors. The German Albatros D series was the workhorse of the Central Powers. This one is an Albatros D5A and is painted with a red lightning bolt and a green tail. It is the design of Jagdstaffel 5, the Green Tails. German squadrons began differentiating themselves through wild color schemes. Note the matching green wheels of the green tails. The variety and colors of German squadrons led Allies to refer to them as the Flying Circus. More than 2,500 Albatros D5 and D5As were built. In the spring of 1918, Nearly 50% of all German fighter aircraft were Albatros. What types of planes did the Allies fly in World War I? The concentric circles of color identify this as an Allied plane. The Nieuport 11 was originally designed as a French racing plane. In the summer of 1915, it was enlisted into service. The British and French used its agility and good rate of climb to combat the Fokker Scourge. The top-mounted Lewis light machine gun allowed firing above the propeller arc. He's reaching for the trigger. The stylized initials RL are on the side of this Nieuport 11 for Raoul Lufbery, the first French-American fighter ace. The Nieuport 28 was built by the French and sold to America for their fighter squadrons. 297 were purchased, and each would be outfitted with 2 Vickers machine guns. It continued with the concept of the Nieuport line, lightweight and highly maneuverable. A more powerful 160 horsepower engine was installed. The fuselage was extended to present a streamlined profile, an advantage when agility was needed. The French, however, preferred a slightly slower, more robust alternative. One of the best fighter planes of the Great War, the Spad 7. By August 1917, the French had over 50 squadrons of these, and almost 500 total were in service. This Spad 7 was manufactured in Norwich, England in 1917, and later sold to the United States, then sent to North Island, here in San Diego. The Spad 7 was a sturdy, rugged aircraft with exceptional top speed and climbing ability. It felt heavier than the Nieuports, but proved to be a stable gun platform. The 303 Vickers machine gun was nose-mounted and synchronized with the propeller. If the Spad came under heavy fire, its weight, power, and stability could be used to dive safely and break away from a dogfight. The top American fighter ace, Eddie Rickenbacker, flew a Spad 13 over no man's land at 11 a.m. on November 11, 1918. He observed the armistice, later writing, "Brown uniformed men poured out of the American trenches, gray-green uniforms out of the German. From my observer's seat overhead, I watched them throw their helmets in the air, discard their guns, wave their hands. The Great War was over." A final note, Zeppelins like this German L-31 were used for bombing and reconnaissance. At 650 feet in length, it presented an ominous and formidable foe, especially when in groups of up to 16 on a bombing raid. The fighter plane shows a sense of its scale. Initially, Zeppelins were impervious to attack by aircraft or artillery because of their high altitude. By the end of the war, airplane armament and capabilities forced the Zeppelins into obsolescence. After the war, the USS Shenandoah sailed up the west coast in 1924, passing through San Diego twice. Its overall length was 680 feet and must have been a magnificent sight. For comparison, the modern Goodyear blimp is 192 feet long. The Graf Zeppelin, at 776 feet in length, carried passengers across the Atlantic from 1928 to 1937. The insignia on the tail fins forewarn of things to come. Oh, the humanity! Be sure to see the next part in this series. Thanks for watching San Diego Review.